1 Kings chapter 22, verse 19. 1 Kings chapter 22 and verse 19. And he said, Hear thou therefore the word of the Most High. I saw the Most High sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. Now, our puny minds, we watch what we see on TV, and we have images that flood our minds when we hear about this throne. When we read about all the host of heaven standing by him, we think of like a throne, and we think of men standing on the right, and we think of men standing on the left. But it's bigger than that. It's way bigger than that. Way bigger than that. Verse 20. And the Most High said, Who shall persuade Ahab, and he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this manner, and another said on that manner. And there came forth a spirit and stood before the Most High, and said, I will persuade him. And the Most High said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. Now, that spirit, in order to get into that man, he has to be going off in the world. That soul has to either have sold his soul, like you hear what we're hearing about today with P. Diddy and all these people in entertainment. If they sell a soul, they open up their whole body, their whole mind to spirits like this, lying spirits. And it's easier for a lying spirit to get into a body like that or a soul like that. That's why he said by name who he was going to go into. And he said, Thou shalt persuade him and prevail also. Go forth and do so. Now, therefore, behold, the Most High put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets, and the Most High have spoken evil concerning thee. All the Most High did was allow the spirit. He gave him authority to do what he wanted to do. And so, does it say what side he came from? We know that it came from the left-hand side. But I just wanted to show you that when we look at this, the Most High has a throne. And we read earlier, we know that the throne is in heaven. So these were straight commandments with no deviation of any sort. So where is the left-hand side and the right-hand side? Some say the fourth or the fifth dimension is where all this took place. But the Most High tells us that the heavens is his throne. So let's go to Job chapter 38. Job 38. Job 38 and verse 31. And it reads, Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Do anybody know where that is? Pleiades and Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazareth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Now, all of these that I just read are stars and clusters of stars in the heavens. And they show up at certain times, these stars. Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Canst thou lift up thy voice to the clouds, that abundance of waters may cover thee? Now he said in verse 33, Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? So there's ordinances that continue to do what they're supposed to do day in and day out, just like Psalms 19 has said. Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Now we see that the Egyptians tried to set the dominions in the earth by the stars. We see the pyramids there. We see in South America, we see the pyramids down there. We see some in China. We see some in India. Okay, we see some in Jerusalem. There's pyramids that are still covered. We see some in Ethiopia. These pyramids, they will try to set the ordinance of the stars in the earth. These are ways that they tried to set the calendar. And whenever Pleiades or Orion or Mazareth would come over these pyramids, they knew that the spring was getting ready to start. As you notice in 31, it said, sweet influences of Pleiades. Influence, the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something or the effect itself. So Pleiades has a sweet influence over things on the earth, over people. This has a lot to do with the seasons. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, and let's go to verse 14. And the Most High said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. All right, and this is how we get our feast. Let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. What are the stars mostly made out of? Hydrogen, gases, and heat, which makes bright, bright light, right? And the Most High made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And the Most High set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth and to rule over the day and rule over the night and to divide the light from the darkness. And the Most High saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Now, brothers are still messing up on these Sabbath days, thinking that you govern the Sabbath based on a new moon, and your Sabbath runs in concurrent with the new moon. So every new moon, 7 days after the new moon is considered a Sabbath. That's not right. Notice that the moon was created on the what? On the fourth day. So there was 3 days before the moon, the sun, and the stars were created. 3 days were already here. So the new moon technically came in on the fourth day, but the Most High rested on the seventh day. So he didn't keep a new moon Sabbath. He kept a Sabbath based on the first day that he created the earth, 7 days. So that Sabbath is always running, not with the new moon, but it straddles the new moon. Okay, so there's a weekly Sabbath that's different from a new moon Sabbath. I thought I'd make sure I say that so brothers can understand that if they're keeping a new moon Sabbath, that's not correct. So let's keep going. Even though the new moon is considered a Sabbath oath, it's not a weekly Sabbath, just so you know. Let's go to Leviticus 23. Leviticus 23. Notice when he says that these stars were created for, and the moon and the sun were created for seasons, right? So when we look at Leviticus 23, notice what he says here. Verse 3. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Most High in all your dwellings. So that Sabbath straddles the new moon. These are the feasts of the Most High, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their season. So he told us what to use, the sun, the moon, the stars, all to govern the seasons. So let's go back. And there's other scriptures that say that the moon is the sign of feast in Sirach 43, but we don't have to go there. But the influences of Pleiades, the angels also have influence, as we have read in 2 Kings 19. When we read that in that chapter, it talked about, 2 Kings chapter 22, it spoke about that the Spirit would persuade. The same word persuade is the same thing as influence. So when he went down to persuade the prophet, that was an influence of that lying spirit that went down to influence him. The influences of Pleiades have something also to do with angels. Orion has something to do with angels. The moon, the sun, the stars all have something to do with angels. The custodians of the cosmos, the angels, can be found in beliefs and cultures and religions all around this planet, all around the world. There are angels of the sun, there are angels of the stars, and angels of the moon. We have to keep that in mind. All of this have been claimed and reported in the ancient days. This is a book called The Seven Sisters of the Pleiades, Stories from Around the World by Munya Andrews. Counting Time by the Pleiades. Counting Time by the Pleiades. Many cultures commence their new year and mark the seasons by observing the stars of the Pleiades. The notion of the stars of the Pleiades being used to determine the equinoctial and solstice sun is not uncommon, even where it appears that the observers may be following a solar or a lunar calendar. Let's drop down. This is page 331. Let's drop down to here, another. Another mode of intercalation was to observe the rising and setting of the Pleiades in order to adjust the lunar calendar with the solar one, as among the Pawnee Indians in the American plains. Like many other cultures of the northern hemisphere, their new year was determined by the reappearance of the stars of the Pleiades in the early morning skies. The star cluster was used to set the moon count straight, although a 12th month of kata, or darkness, occasionally paired with an extra 13th month ensued before the year officially began. So it's telling you here that the Native Americans use the Pleiades to start their new year during the time of March or April, during the spring, using the Pleiades to determine the equinox. Page 329. Doniger O'Flaherty's comment needs to be somewhat qualified, as the new moon does not always fall precisely at the time of the spring equinox, which we just had last week, which was March 19th. So we must read this as meaning when the new moon is nearest to the spring equinox, not at it. So what he's saying here is that the new moon always comes after the spring equinox, and the spring equinox is determined by the sight of Pleiades in the southern sky, followed by Orion. Orion always chases Pleiades. And Arcturus always comes in the autumn.